Hola gente, this is Victoria, artist of everything cute. You know, let's take a break. Let's make some tea and color some pages. I had a lot of plans for this year, and I bet you did too. Besides making a lot of illustrations and comics, I also make merch and books. I spent all weekend formatting the first volume of my comic, #Blessed, that we kickstarted last year. And I also do a lot of conventions in the US and elsewhere, and for years, I just wanted to make an art book. And this is still going to be the year I do it. After we fulfill all of #Blessed, I was going to kickstart it, the art book, and as stretch goals, I had this idea of making a sketchbook and a coloring book. And I was gonna have it all ready for Otakon, or maybe even New Comic Con as the latest date, as those two are my largest shows of the year. Now, I don't know what will happen. Hopefully, we'll be able to do it this year. But I'm making available some of my girls and Bubble Key Tea as coloring pages for you to have fun. Go to the link in the description to download them. I cleared all the line art and made grayscale files. They're letter size, so all you gotta do is just send it to your printer in whatever paper you have available. I recommend to use an inkjet printer, but you can use a laser printer if that's what you have. So I tried printing out these girls in different paper, but I just ended up sticking with regular printer paper, Hewlett-Packard heavyweight project paper, and comic maker paper. All the info for these papers is listed below. Today, I will be showing you techniques to improve your coloring. I will be using 3 main art supplies: Prismacolor pencils, Staedtler Fineliners, and Copic markers. Put on your favorite Pokemon pajamas and let's begin. My first coloring try is with regular printer paper and Staedtler Fineliners. Fineliners are kinda tricky to cover big areas of colors, so it's best to start small. Also, because you can't do gradients easily with them by mixing colors, we gotta try some tricks, like doing lines more and more separated from the main area of color to create the illusion of colors fading away, kinda like screen tones. We can also add elements to our picture that weren't originally there. I love the look of built-in shadows. Here you can notice I'm not moving my wrist as I'm working, but moving my elbow instead. It's a very common artist tip to avoid wrist injury. It doesn't mean you must tense up your wrist and hand. Keep them loose, but make sure you move your whole forearm instead of just your hand. If it was up to me, I'd leave it as it is right now. It gives me kinda like noir vibes. But let's keep checking out what other things we can do with fineliners. Instead of fully coloring areas, we can do a quick pass, not fully coloring everything. Again, to makes it look kinda like if it was screen tones, from manga. I like the look because it makes it look very sketchy and a bit ethereal. I'm doing my lines following the flow of the hair, and hey, if you don't fully like it, you can always go over it again. Just make sure to let the markers dry so the printer paper won't pile up. I cheated a little bit and got tempted by highlighters I have on my desk. For the green, I'm doing as little overlap as possible to get this color as soft as I can. For the neon yellow, I'm going over the color several times to make it really vibrant. I wouldn't necessarily do all these things together in one page, but here are some coloring styles you can try with stationery supplies. Next up, Prismacolor pencils. I'm gonna be coloring horns on Hewlett-Packard heavyweight paper. It's a very decent paper to do this on. It's thick, no coatings, and it has a slight texture which makes it work really well for pencil. The trick to improve your pencil coloring immediately is to color in circles when you're filling up an area with color. You just move your pencil in kind of like a circular motion. That way, you will fill up all the spaces on the paper, especially if it has a texture, and you will avoid white spots on your coloring. Also try to not press down too hard, because it kind of makes it look like it's polishing while you're coloring, and it gives it a weird shine that sometimes doesn't look so great. Here I'm doing a gradient with two colors in a similar family. Notice how I'm not buffering out all sides. Some parts I'm doing hard lines, and in others I'm really going in for that color mix. The contrast is what makes things visually interesting. There she goes with the neon colors again. I'm doing gradients on all the places where I add blush on my cuties. Cheeks, ears, fingers, her forehead. And you can see here that my pencil has like a flat spot, and that's what I use to create these gradients that don't mix with any other color, that just fade away. For the hair, I'm gonna show you how to do a gradient with two colors that are not in the same family. Horn's hair is two secondary colors, teal and lilac. I'm doing strokes and lifting my pencil at the end to make them fade out, where the colors will meet. It's pretty simple, but it takes a lot of practice and pencil control. I'll also use a darker teal and darker purple for shadows. I love the look of pencil coloring, but I kinda hate working with them. They're a little bit thin for me, and I end up grappling really hard and cramping up my hand. My beloved white Signo pen reappears for highlights and fixes. This is a must-have to complement any coloring art tool. I think I'll leave Horns like this. Again, I really like the contrast. Maybe I'll continue coloring her later, but I really wanna move on to Copics next. I printed my line art on Copic marker paper. There are other brands as well that can work out, such as Canson. I'm gonna start with the skin coloring, making sure I don't go over the lines too much, because the printed ink could bleed. I did leave this printout to dry for a long time, but you can never be too cautious. I'm using YR000 and 00 to do my first passes, starting to create volume. You see, I enjoy coloring things, giving them volume, rather than following a single harsh light source. It's a technique used a lot in like manga illustrations. Imagine a more general ambient line rather than a stark light source placed like at the top, perhaps. I continue with a pastel pink color to build up my blush, and there is the neon again. I just can't help myself, can I? For her blush, I dot all the colors, and I work really fast to make sure everything blends as softly as I can in the tiny space that I have. The good thing is that with marker paper, we have a lot more time to work than with any other paper. For the hair, I also want to use gradients, this time more linear than what I did on her face. I'm using 4 colors here to give it more depth, and because I couldn't find the right pink for her hair. I really need to get a couple more pinks when I can. For her sweater, I decided to not shade it, just focus on the heart pattern. You don't have to add gradients to everything. And I added some extra details like the stitching, and maybe we can even do other patterns to make it look more fun. For the background, I kinda cheated again. My marker was running out of ink, but I really like the warm lilac of the highlighter, so I tried to use it. Now, despite it being water-based, it worked out okay on the Copic matte paper. I was surprised. Just gotta make sure you don't touch it before it dries. Now, this was surprisingly fun. With how much I've struggled recently inking on paper versus inking on my Cintiq, which I love doing, I might start coloring printouts just like this. I was never a die-hard fan of coloring books. When I was little, I preferred to use them as reference for characters that I wanted to draw. And I remember that I always ended up being frustrated that the tools I was using were ruining the artwork. If you never tried coloring, or if you tried and set it aside because it frustrated you, I hope these tips have helped you, and perhaps given you some new ideas. And if you're a super fan of coloring books, I hope you found new tricks you want to try. Download the pages on the link in my description box, and post them on Instagram, tagging me at SHOURIMAJO so I can see what you've done. As always, thanks to my patrons for the support, and I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time. Ciao ciao!